Hello, and welcome to the Vorpal board stream. I hope you all are having a great Friday night. And tonight, we're going to be talking about maybe the end of the world. That's right, friends, the end of the world, and not a cool, fun, Marvel type end of the world. I'm talking about a creepy, tentacle filled, Lovecraftian end of the world at the hands of an evil technological corporation. I am here today to talk about Techlandia, which is an upcoming game from the man himself, Dan Ackerman, who is with me tonight. Dan, how are you?
Hello.
All right.
Greetings from Brooklyn.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. We're going to do a little bit of chatting about Dan's game, and then we'll actually do a break, and then we're actually going to play a round of the game here on Vorpal board. So what you're looking at right now is the Vorpal board product. It's a way for us to play board games with each other, even though we're not together. So Dan's actually in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm in Albany, New York. We're actually not that far away from each other, but we're not in the same room. I have Dan's physical game here with me, a prototype. And then Dan's just going to be able to take part in the game from where he's sitting. So hopefully you enjoy it. Let's jump right in. Dan, you have a very interesting backstory. If anybody looks up Dan, they will see that he's currently working as a senior editor at CNET. He has worked on many publications and websites that are tech and video game related over the years. He has a book about Tetris that actually is in my kitchen right now.
Oh, awesome.
And he was once a radio DJ.
That is true.
So now, board game designer. Give me the backstory of how
Oh,
this
yeah.
kind of happened.
Yeah, most people know me from the last 15 years or so being a reporter for CNET, writing about technology and video games and VR and social media and all that stuff. And over the past year or two, I've noticed I like to see what kind of trends are happening, what's going on, and I've noticed a real trend towards people taking, moving away from video games and going back to these old school tabletop games, which I always used to love but haven't been super involved in over the past 10 or 15 years. And I said, that's really interesting. I want to explore this some more. So I got a bunch of games. I started playing them. I started looking into it more and more. And I thought, wow, this is a great fun hobby. I wrote a couple of stories for CNET about it. And that was about it until I went to one of these technology company events where they have a big press conference and they invite everybody and you all pack into a auditorium together to see the big new shiny product. And most of these events are pretty awful, but this one was especially awful. You get in one line, the PR guy tells you to get another line, but that's the wrong line. They say, wait here, we'll come get you for an interview. They never come back. And mass confusion. It was just, a nightmarish scenario. And in back of my head, it said, oh, escape from this tech company press conference. That's like a video game. Wait a minute, that's a board game. And it morphed into this basically expressing our fears and concerns about the overreach of technology through a satire-like board game. I call it a little Douglas Adamsy, about a big overpowering tech company, whether it's Apple or Samsung or whatever you want to call it, who's got a new phone they're introducing, but you happen to know they're going to use this new phone to take over the world and open the portals to other dimensions. By having a couple of million cell phones out there all connecting to each other with rare earth elements in them, which are actually in smartphones.
Right. Yeah, it's a little bit too close to the truth, right?
Yeah, it's all, you know what, all the jokes and all the encounters and gear and funny things in there are really just 1 degree away from the truth. And anyone who's spent a lot of time following companies that produce cell phones or laptops or any kind of technology, or just watches a lot of business news or tech news, will recognize a good deal of this. But it's definitely in a parody vein, but it's uncomfortably close to reality parody vein.
Yeah, that was my first. That was gonna be my first question. Is there's reading the rule book here, and people, you all see this when we start playing the game too. The text on the cards, kind of everything is my guess from a part of your life at some point, but tweaked up to an 11, right? So I
Yeah,
assume all of these things are things that anyone who runs the beat that you run would recognize immediately, right?
and I wanted to put it in such a way that it was entertaining. Rule books are really dense
Yeah.
sometimes, and
Oh yeah.
that's an area where I think a lot of people could use a lot of help. So as a writer, primarily, I really made that a big focus to get a rule book that is readable and you would actually enjoy reading. It's not a chore. It's not too long. And then into the cards and things, they all have a reason to be there. They all have a meaning. It's not just rolling some dice and picking some numbers. There really is a storyline behind it. that's not just tacked on.
Right, right, cool. So one thing I'll let everybody know, to be sure when you're watching this, is we're currently playing a prototype, and Dan has actually made some changes to the prototype since this one that I received. That we'll probably highlight as we get into the game, but like some changes to the minis, some changes to some of the tiles, and some updates to the art. So what you see here conceptually, I don't think there's been any rules changes. Am I right on that, Dan?
No, not really.
Okay, so conceptually the gameplay and the mechanics will all be the same, but there are some changes. Now my question for you is like, did you make all of this yourself?
Let's see. The art, yes, I do a lot of. I've always loved design in addition to being a writer.
Yep.
So the design is all mine on this version. For the other version where the tiles, for example, look a little bit different, this is an artist I hired to do some of this. And then the miniatures, I now have standee versions of them for a more budget version of the game, and that's original art that I had done of all the different characters, really the same characters as the minis, but just as standees, because I feel like maybe you want to buy a $25 or $29 game, not a $45 or $50 or
Right.
$60 game. And I think there's a lot of room for that in the market. There's so many great games that are so expensive. Let's make a cool, fun game that's almost an impulse buy.
Yeah. And I really like the boxes. Actually, I'm gonna
Mhm.
grab it. Hold on. I am a fan of boxes that are this size.
Yeah.
Board game makers out there, I like the small box when you can pull it
Mhm.
off. I like my Lord of the Rings, giant box too. But I do like when people are able to make their game this small, just because I like to be able to take them with me. So kudos, Dan. But the thing that I like is like when I play with a prototype, and I can tell that the designer made it. To me, it is very interesting. Like it feels almost like a handcrafted artifact. Like you designed this game, but then you also built it.
Mhm.
Which I don't know why that it almost like it carries more power that way than something that comes off of just a printing machine somewhere
Oh
far
yeah,
away.
I mean,
That
there's
like
a
a
lot of it's an interesting mix of handcrafting and
right,
actually produced prototype parts. Like all the plastic things are things that I actually 3D printed
right,
myself.
exactly, yeah, lovely.
The QR code tokens, the minis, the little markers, and eventually most of them will maybe be replaced by more mainstream
Sure, right,
components in the final version. But I think 3D printing is frankly super fun.
right.
And by writing about it, I got to get into it. I'm setting up and testing 4 new 3D printers at work now.
All right,
You
nice.
know which 3D printer to buy, come back in like 4 to 6 weeks, and I'll have an answer for you. But I think there's a real future there for people who say, I want to design a game and experience, but I don't want to make it so expensive and cumbersome because it comes with all these parts and miniatures. But you know what? Here's the STL files.
Yep.
You can go print them yourself because 3D printers are under $200 now, and they're certainly good enough to make game parts with.
Right. Yeah. And I could tell that this was, it was just rough enough around the edges that I think, okay, well, yeah, this is something like kind of like a labor of love that I'm holding here. That isn't, I don't know why, but that it always is more interesting to me when it's obvious that somebody, kind of sweat over this to make it. That's
Oh
just
yeah,
a
I think
fascinating
the
thing
the
to me.
fun part. I mean, I love messing around in Photoshop and Illustrator. I come from a magazine background originally, where you had to get very hands-on in design.
Right.
So I actually built the smartphone dashboard that you're going to see is I literally just built that from scratch in Illustrator,
Okay.
and it's amazing what you can do with just simple lines and tools.
Yep. Cool. So you is it for sure that you're going to bring this to Kickstarter? Do you know what the plan is for where the end result of Techlandia is going to be?
Yeah, right now the plan is we're going to launch it on Kickstarter the first week of August.
Okay. Cool.
And we'll have a bunch of stuff going on right around then. And in the meantime, I definitely plan on making a print and play version available for anyone who wants to download it and try it out. And hopefully send me some notes, or send me your thoughts on it, or tweet about it. And you can sign up to get that print and play version just by going to techlandiagame.com. And there's just an email sign up. And when I have the files ready, everyone's going to get free access to that.
Cool. Very cool. And then so is your goal to start being a little independent game designer? Like what where are you headed? What is your kind of overarching goal? If you run the Kickstarter, let's say
Yeah.
it succeeds, you get it printed, you do a run of the game, you deliver it, huzzah. Is this kind of like flirting with this, or do you think that you would want to do this regularly?
I feel there are certainly other types of games I would like to create and have great ideas for, but I do a lot of things. I have a full-time day job, and this is a great adventure. Writing this book was a great adventure.
Yep,
There are other
yep.
books I'm working on. So I admit I try and work on a lot of different things. However, I am loving this new relationship I have with tabletop gaming, and it's such a great antidote to the current state of video games, where
Yeah.
everything's so cookie cutter, and so built around just a handful of things, and everything feels like a sequel of a sequel of a sequel. I have no doubt that, especially if people like this game, there will be more.
Cool, very cool. And I think we'll talk about it while we're playing too. But you allude in the rule book that I have that there could be additional chapters and
Mhm.
structure to would the plan be that that would be part of this game, or is that like would that be later on games? Like, were you envisioning that you're shipping this game with additional scenarios?
I think we'll probably end up with a Kickstarter stretch goal
Okay,
of an extra scenario, which is
cool.
basically a different storyline using the same parts,
Right. Okay.
and then maybe a further one on top of that.
Okay. Cool. So, what are you playing right now? What's your board game of choice at the moment?
What was I just playing? I was just playing Star Wars Imperial Assault,
All
which
right.
is
Nice.
fun. Also a big fan of a lot of the Zombicide games and
Yep.
Mansions of Madness. I actually have in a box behind me, because it was on sale on Amazon this week, Arkham Horror, the
Yep.
new
Yep.
version of that.
Yep.
So I tend to like things that are very tile based and kind of exploratory with combat, but also just like a lot of strategy,
Yeah.
uh, but have recognizable characters and plots and storylines. I think probably as a writer, I'm looking for some sort of drama.
Yeah. I feel like those thematic elements can go a long
Mhm.
way when they're executed well, and those new app-based versions of
Mhm.
like
Oh yeah,
Imperial Assault and stuff are real nice. I played Imperial Assault a couple of years ago, and I we didn't use the app. I don't even know if it existed yet. And I played as the Imperial
oh yeah.
player, playing against everybody else, and it became catty very quickly. So we did not last long. I think
Mhm.
we ejected like halfway through the campaign, just because it I like it more when it's cooperative, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I come to those games to have like an adventure and feel like you're winning and not, going at each other's throats. But yeah, you and me like a lot of the same games. That's
Cool,
great.
cool. And I would call this co-op repetitive.
Yeah, I'd
It's
agree.
cooperative in that we're playing against this evil company, but it's competitive in that we're seeing who can accomplish the goals first. And frankly, in a lot of the games I've played, it gets a little cutthroat near the end, where
Right.
people are throwing each other under the bus, which frankly ends up being pretty fun.
Yeah, yeah, and I think at least you have like the story and theme elements where it's clear that, that all the bloggers who are at this event that are in the know are trying to stop it, right? So at least you feel like, oh well, they made it. They made it through the elevator. That's good for all of us. I guess the world didn't end.
Mhm.
But yeah, you'll see when folks are seeing us do the playthrough, you'll how kind of that plays out. Um, any chat, and we have a few folks in chat. If there are any
Mhm.
questions for Dan, I'll take a pause here right at the very end before we finish up this section of the show to take any questions. So feel free anybody to jump in. And so I have a question like about Kickstarter for you because
Mhm.
we're actually running a Kickstarter right now, so I'm
Yeah.
going through the very hectic world of Kickstarter. What's been your strategy to prepare for that? So are you kind of doing like community building stuff way up
Mhm.
front? Because like I assume what you said 1st of August, so you're a few months out. Are you looking to kind of generate a mailing list and stuff like that, or like is there a way for the people who are watching this to kind of join into that community to follow Techlandia? What's like your preferred method that they're getting involved? I guess.
Yeah, that's been very important, that preliminary audience building,
Yeah.
especially through mailing lists, which frankly, in the online world that I work in, newsletters and things like that actually work really well
Yeah. Oh
still.
yeah.
I
Crazy.
thought it was outdated technology, but no, people love newsletters. And that's why I have one of the first things I did was set up a very basic website, which has gotten a little more advanced at techlandiagame.com. And there's an email sign up right there. And I started participating a lot more in things like board game geek forums and Reddit groups and Facebook groups, and just meeting a lot of interesting people like you in the community who are all working on these crazy, great independent projects. And it's the most uncorporate thing I think I've been involved with in 20 years.
Yeah.
Because when you write a book, it's super corporate. Like you don't like you should find your own audience, but they have a lot of say in it too, and the PR thing, and press releases, and editors, and marketing stuff. So just being totally DIY, total startup mode, I think is super interesting.
Yeah, and the thing I found too, I was shocked about this industry generally because I started going to conventions, chatting with people, especially about this idea, right? Because I was a little bit nervous just about I'm building a tool that you can play games online. Like, are people going to like that or not like that? Are publishers going to like it or not like it? And what I was shocked about was just like how kind of small the industry felt. It was a lot of individuals who were running these games and making these games, which was refreshing to me as well. And I imagine is very different than a lot of the stuff that you're covering on a day-to-day basis
Yeah,
in the hardware world.
we're in a golden age right now, I think, and inevitably it will become more corporatized as people realize how much money is frankly being made
Right.
here, and how big the market is, and how people who haven't played a tabletop or a board game since they were kids are suddenly going out and buying 60, 70, $80
Right.
games, and going to conventions and tuning into Twitch streams. So I think it's inevitable, almost like mobile phone games were small and indie at one point, and
Yep.
then it became a huge corporate thing. So we should enjoy this kind of cool time while we can.
Yeah. And I love the fact just that, like you're a great example, right? You now that with the ability to create high quality components and get access to a market to sell these things, you can actually make a game having no experience in the industry and really no contacts in the industry and put it out there and say, I made a game. Whoever's interested can back it or not back it, right? Like, I think that's kind of like just a fresh thing that is not very easy to do in any creative industry. Books and video games, it's difficult to pull off something like this. So I don't know. It's exciting to me as well.
Yeah, it fulfills a lot of the promise of the internet. What we were originally promised 20 years ago is that it would democratize
Right.
access. And all of a sudden, anybody can start an online magazine, but then you have this huge, rush of junk, and the internet is now, bunch of big companies and
Right.
controlling it, and nobody can really find anything. Kickstarter has managed to stay mostly pretty pure, and I think they've done a very good job. And it's been a great thing of an industry and a group of people looking for something, and a platform being the right platform at the right place at the right time. And games and Kickstarter just feel like they were made for each other.
Yeah, and it is interesting just how dominant board games have become on Kickstarter. You look at kind of like the annual summaries and stuff,
Oh yeah.
and it's just like mind blowing what kind of a share tabletop games are on the platform. So that's cool. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a little break. We're going to go away for a second and then come back. And then when we come back, we're going to do a quick overview of the game, and then we will get right into trying to stop the end of the world. And hopefully, I'm the one who does it. So, everybody, we will be back in just 1 second.